In January 2025, U.S. warships moved closer to Venezuela. Headlines talked about invasion. Social media talked about World War III. But this isn't a war story. Venezuela isn't being surrounded because of ideology or democracy. It's being surrounded because of oil. 300 billion barrels of it, and almost none of it is being used. Stop. Here's the strangest part. The country that needs this oil the most is the same country stopping itself from buying it. This is a money story. And to understand why American aircraft carriers are floating off the coast of a collapsing socialist state, you need to understand how we got here. More importantly, you need to understand who benefits if this ever actually resolves. Let's start with the basics. Venezuela has the largest proven oil reserves in the world. Bigger than Saudi Arabia, bigger than Russia, bigger than Iraq. 304 billion barrels, and most of it stays underground. Not because Venezuela doesn't want to sell it, but because the country is so economically shattered, so politically isolated, and so technically broken that it can't extract its own wealth. Meanwhile, the United States is one of the top oil producers on the planet, and it still imports millions of barrels every single day. The math is absurd. One country is sitting on a fortune it can't touch. Another country needs what the first country has, but won't buy it because of sanctions it imposed on itself. This is where the system broke. Rewind to 1998. Hugo Chavez takes power in Venezuela and immediately starts playing a dangerous game. He nationalizes the oil industry. He kicks out foreign companies. He uses oil money to fund social programs, buy political loyalty, and position himself as the anti-American hero of Latin America. For a while, it works. Oil prices are high, money flows. Chavez becomes a folk legend. But here's the mistake that changed everything. He guts the state oil company, PDVSA. He fills it with political appointees instead of engineers. He stops reinvesting in infrastructure. He lets the equipment rot. When Chavez dies in 2013 and Nicolás Maduro takes over, the whole system begins to collapse. Oil production drops from 3.2 million barrels a day to under 700,000. Inflation hits 1,000,000%. People start fleeing the country by the millions. Here's the part most people misunderstand. Venezuela's economy imploded, but its oil didn't disappear. It's still there, trapped under a government that can't govern and a population that can't eat. Enter the United States. In 2019, Washington slapped sanctions on Venezuela's oil sector. American companies are effectively banned from doing business with Maduro's regime. The stated reason is human rights. The real reason is leverage. The logic goes like this. If you starve the regime of oil revenue, maybe it collapses. Maybe a new government takes over. Maybe that government is friendlier to American interests. Maybe, just maybe, ExxonMobil and Chevron get invited back in. Except it didn't work. Maduro stayed in power, the oil stayed in the ground, and global energy markets got tighter. This is why sanctions failed. Then came 2022. Russia invades Ukraine. Oil prices spike. Europe stops buying Russian crude. Suddenly, the world needs new sources of oil, fast, and there's Venezuela, sitting on 300 billion barrels, doing absolutely nothing with it. So the Biden administration does something quietly remarkable. It starts easing sanctions, not officially, not loudly, but just enough to let Chevron resume limited operations in Venezuela. The White House frames it as a way to stabilize global energy prices, but let's be clear about what actually happened. The United States decided that cheap oil was more important than regime change. Now, here's where the tension builds. Because lifting sanctions doesn't fix Venezuela's core problem. The infrastructure is still broken, the corruption is still rampant, PDVSA is still staffed by people who don't know how to run an oil field. Even with American companies back in the country, production is barely ticking up. It would take years and tens of billions of dollars to bring Venezuela's oil industry back to full capacity. And no company wants to invest that kind of money in a country where the government could nationalize everything the moment it feels like it. So you have this bizarre standoff. The United States wants Venezuela's oil, but doesn't trust Venezuela's government. Venezuela wants American investment, but refuses to give up control. And meanwhile, China has been quietly lending Venezuela billions of dollars in exchange for future oil shipments. Russia has been sending technical support. Iran has been swapping oil under the table. Venezuela's oil isn't just sitting idle, it's being carved up by every major power that isn't the United States. This is the uncomfortable math. Which brings us back to those warships. In January 2025, the U.S. Southern Command announces it's conducting military exercises near Venezuelan waters. The official reason is countering drug trafficking. The obvious subtext is reminding Maduro who controls the hemisphere. But there's a third layer. Because if Venezuela's government were to suddenly collapse, if there were chaos, if the oil fields were at risk of being seized by some unfriendly actor, the United States would need to be in position, not to invade, not to occupy, but to secure, to stabilize, to make sure that 300 billion barrels don't end up in the wrong hands. This is the part where people start using words like imperialism and democracy, but those are emotional frameworks. The financial framework is simpler. Venezuela has something the world needs. It can't extract it alone. Whoever helps extract it gets a cut. Right now, that's China, Russia, Iran, and a handful of smaller players. The United States used to be the main partner. It wants that position back, but it can't just roll in with tanks and take it. Not in 2025, not with every phone equipped with a camera and every incident turning into a viral scandal within minutes. So instead, you get this slow-motion chess game, sanctions that half lift, naval exercises that half threaten, diplomatic back channels that half negotiate. And all the while, oil prices fluctuate, inflation ticks up, and voters in Ohio and Pennsylvania wonder why gas is so expensive when there's an ocean of oil just sitting there a few thousand miles south. Here's the truth nobody wants to say out loud. The United States doesn't need to invade Venezuela. It just needs to wait. Wait for the economy to collapse further. Wait for Maduro's inner circle to fracture. Wait for the moment when a deal becomes inevitable. And when that moment comes, American oil companies will be ready. Contracts will be signed, wells will be reopened, and billions of dollars will start flowing north. Not because of tanks, because of spreadsheets. But there's a risk in waiting, because while the United States hesitates, China writes checks, Russia sends engineers, and every year that passes, Venezuela's oil becomes less American and more aligned with powers that don't particularly care about free markets or democratic transitions. If the United States waits too long, it might find that the oil it wanted was already sold to someone else. So the question isn't whether America will go to war with Venezuela. The question is whether it's already too late to win without one.